Welcome back to Film Infection. Hope you're having a great day. Spider-Man No Way Home just came out in theaters and it was awesome. Okay, so right now I'm gonna stop and rank every single Spider-Man movie from the worst to the best. Let's get right into it. Coming in last place is gonna be The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I originally thought that this was pretty much universally agreed upon to be the worst Spider-Man movie, but I've seen some people out there saying that they think it has some good qualities or something. I honestly don't understand that. Okay, this movie is a mess, okay? It's an utter mess. The only thing good I can say about this movie is that visually it looks okay at some parts. Some parts do not look good at all. The villain design for Electro and Green Goblin do not look good, but besides that, this might be one of the better looking Spider-Man movies that we've had, and also the suit. Okay, the Spider-Man suit looks pretty good. But besides that, everything else is horrible. Tonally, it's all over the place. There are way too many plot lines, okay? It's very obvious the studio went in and told the director, you have to introduce all this stuff because we want to make all these spin-off movies, okay? It doesn't matter if it doesn't fit into the story right or if it clashes with other things in the movie. We need you to shove it in, okay? And as a result, you have an overcrowded movie with a whole bunch of plot lines that are completely tonally different, and it feels like there is no heart and soul behind this movie, okay? It feels very bland and dry. Despite all the colorful visuals and the deep relationship between Peter and Gwen Stacy dying at the end, it still doesn't feel like there is much heart behind this movie. And overall, it's just a chore to get through, okay? It's not very enjoyable. Coming in at number 8 is gonna be The Amazing Spider-Man. Some people like to say this movie wasn't that bad, and I think it was, okay? I think it was a horrible rehash of Spider-Man from 2002. Okay, that movie did everything right, and all this movie had to do was do the same thing, and maybe make it a little shorter, okay, because we'd already seen it, and then just tell a compelling story about Peter Parker battling the Lizard and his relationship with Gwen. It's not very hard, okay? Making a Spider-Man movie is very easy, but this movie felt like it had to do something more, it had to do something different, right? Like introduce Peter Parker's parents, introduce all this conspiracy stuff with Oscorp, and all this stuff that felt very unnecessary, and it felt like they were just adding to his origin story for the sake of adding to it and not actually trying to deepen his character or deepen his mythology in any way. Just make it seem like, oh, there's something the original ones didn't do, but we're gonna do that now. So come watch this movie. And then you watched it and you were like, well, why did you include that? We don't care about Peter Parker's parents. This movie also has a hard time standing out in my opinion. There aren't very many memorable sequences here, so it doesn't really leave an impact on you after you watch it. Okay, in my opinion, this is the Spider-Man movie that leaves the least amount of impact on you as the viewer after you watch it. Okay, I'm not saying it's bad in any way, okay, I think it has some bad qualities, but it's definitely the most forgettable one, in my opinion. Coming in at number 7 is gonna be Spider-Man 3. Now, a lot of people would like to say that The Amazing Spider-Man is better than this movie, and I think that's true, okay? On a story structure level, The Amazing Spider-Man is probably technically a better movie, okay? But this movie, you have a good time with, okay? You cannot have a bad time while watching this movie. Sure, story-wise and character-wise and plotline-wise, some things are underdeveloped, okay? Some things aren't portrayed as well as they should be. Some directions are taken that maybe aren't that good, okay? I'm willing to admit that. But you cannot have a bad time while watching this movie, okay? Whereas with The Amazing Spider-Man, you can. Okay, some people just won't enjoy that movie. But if you're a fan of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man series and just Spider-Man in general, you will enjoy Spider-Man 3. In my opinion, entertainment value is definitely linked to how good your movie is, okay? If your movie is technically made well, right, like it looks good visually and on paper, the story is structured very nicely, that doesn't really matter if when I watch your movie, it's boring as hell and I don't have a good time. And I think a lot of people need to get that into their brains. I'm not trying to say that Spider-Man 3 is some masterpiece or even by any means a well-made film. I'm just trying to say it's enjoyable and entertainment value is definitely linked to how good your movie is. And I have a great time with this movie, and it wraps up a lot of plot lines from the previous 2 movies very nicely, so it goes above The Amazing Spider-Man for me. Up next, we got Spider-Man Far From Home, and right off the bat, this movie is just a ton of fun, okay? It's fun to watch. And that's one of the reasons I don't put it lower on this list, because I honestly don't really think it's that great as a film or even as an MCU film. Okay, I don't really like that it pisses all over everything from Endgame. It sort of turns it all into a joke. I don't really like that. Okay, so if I was ranking this in my MCU ranking, I'd probably put it lower. But this is a Spider-Man ranking, so I'm looking at it through that lens. And as a Spider-Man movie, I still don't think it's that great. Okay, really the only redeeming quality for this movie is that it's really fun and the performances are energetic and funny, I guess. You have this ridiculous premise that feels a little too ridiculous for the MCU, and also you have an entire first act that is just paced horribly, in my opinion. So this movie has a lot of bad things going for it on a technical level, but like I said with Spider-Man 3, I think entertainment value is tied to the quality of a movie, so I might have put this movie even lower if it wasn't as fun, energetic, and entertaining in a sort of family-friendly way. So overall, not the best movie, not the best Spider-Man movie, but it's still fun to watch. Coming in at number 6 is gonna be Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Listen, I love this movie. This is one of my favorites on the list. I think it's so unique and interesting in the way that it uses animation to tell a Spider-Man story. I love the character of Miles Morales. I love the whole multiverse thing and all the different versions of Spider-Man, and I'm pretty sure that if it wasn't for this movie, Spider-Man No Way Home wouldn't have gotten made. Because before this movie, the studios didn't know that we wanted a Spider-Man multiverse, right? But then this movie came out, it did really well, people really enjoyed it, and overall it was just really good. And then Marvel was like, hey, we should do that in live action. People would probably really like it. But aside from that, this movie is also emotionally deep. It has a good story structure, it has some great fan service, and overall it's just really fun. Coming in at number 4 is gonna be Spider-Man Homecoming. I think this movie works really well as an MCU movie and as a superhero action adventure high school movie. I think it works very well as that, but I don't like it as a Spider-Man movie at all. It literally has none of the magic that any of the other Spider-Man movies have. All the other movies have him being bit by the spider and then exploring his powers and then flying around New York City, right? And there's none of that here. I do like that they introduced the high school aspect of Peter Parker, but this just does not feel like the Peter Parker from the previous movies or from the comic books, okay? I'm not saying that this movie doesn't have magic. Certainly has its own kind of MCU magic, but it doesn't have that Spider-Man magic, that distinct feel that even the Amazing Spiderman has, okay? So as a Spider-Man film, this movie isn't great, but I think what it lacks as a Spider-Man movie, it makes up for by being a great MCU movie and just a great superhero movie overall, okay? It's so fun, and like I said before, entertainment value is definitely tied to the quality of a movie. Coming in at number 3 is gonna be Spider-Man, just the first one from 2002. Okay, this movie is straight up classic. Okay, if it wasn't for this movie, the entire 21st century superhero movie craze, right, where just a ton of superhero movies started coming out, that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for this movie. Okay, this movie literally set the wheels in motion for modern superhero movies. Okay, so you sort of have to put it higher. I do think it has some problems, okay? I don't really like how it's campy, but not, I know, before you get mad at me, I know the campiness is good, right? I like the campiness, but I feel like it builds too gradually, right? This movie doesn't embrace its campiness until like halfway through. At the beginning, it's sort of a darker, more serious tone that actually feels kind of grounded, but then as you move through the movie, you eventually get to scenes like the one where Mary Jane is falling off the balcony and then all the people turn to skeletons, like literally just skeletons, and then they fall down because Green Goblin threw a bomb at them, and then Spider-Man is bouncing around like a cartoon character on all of the big balloons. But besides that, I think it does a lot of things right. I love the way that it explores Peter Parker's origin story. I love the way that it explores Peter Parker's character as a whole. Love the dynamic between him and Uncle Ben before Uncle Ben dies. Love the way he's motivated, right? It takes the origin story from the comics and perfectly translates it to film. And this movie showed that that was possible. And I really like that, and it was really enjoyable to me. Has its problems, but you can't put a superhero movie this revolutionary any lower on the list. Coming in second place is gonna be Spider-Man No Way Home. Oh my god, I love this movie, okay? A lot of people are saying, oh, the first half isn't very good, but the second half is good. And that's right, that's true. When I was ranking the Star Wars movie, I said the exact same thing about Rogue One, but I still put it at number 5. 5, okay? Because if the second half of your movie is really good, then that can usually make up for a more mediocre first half. And I think that is definitely the case with this movie, okay? The second half is just so satisfying, so tear-jerking, so grin-inducing, right? You literally smile like every 5 minutes or so, and I'm not exaggerating there, okay? They literally introduce so much great stuff in this movie. It's so emotionally deep and fan servicey at the same time that I just could not put this movie any lower, okay? A lot of these movies just have fan service for the sake of fan service so that you'll be like, oh, look, there's someone I know, that's cool. But this movie does it in a way that keeps you deeply emotionally invested in all of the characters, okay? And I'm very happy that this movie succeeds at that. Can't really say much more without spoiling, but this movie is very good, and the amazing second half definitely makes up for the more mediocre first half. But coming in at first place with the gold medal at number 1 is going to be Spider-Man 2. I know everyone's like, oh, this movie's the best. It is. Okay, everyone's right about that. I like to try to keep my opinions fresh and different and stuff, but like, this movie is the best one. Okay, this movie just takes everything great from the classic movie Spider-Man, and then it just deepens the emotions, raises the stakes, deepens the drama within the relationships, right? But not to the point like they did in Spider-Man 3 where it was just too much, but to the perfect level where you're just invested in this story and you really feel for these characters, okay? And I also like that this movie isn't trying to lift too much. It's not trying to tie into some big cinematic universe. It's just trying to tell a focused story about Peter Parker, okay? It's a careful character study. And I think it is a perfect example of how to make a great character movie and superhero movie and how to mesh them together very well. Thanks for watching, guys. If you liked the video, make sure to hit that like button. And also, if you enjoy the content on my channel, consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time I publish a video.